The sky was not supposed to look like this. At first, people thought it was a trick of the sunlight, or maybe some kind of new weather phenomenon. But when the news channels showed live footage from satellites and drones, the world fell silent. Hundreds of massive black shapes hovered above the Earth, casting shadows so wide that entire cities were shrouded in darkness. No one knew what they were or where they came from. They didn't look like any human technology. They were perfect, silent, and terrifying. In a small lab on the outskirts of Geneva, Dr. Elias Mercer stared at the screens, his heart hammering. He was a cognitive scientist, a man who spent his life studying the human mind, not aliens. Yet here he was, watching the impossible unfold. The alien ships were enormous, far bigger than any aircraft or space station humanity had ever built, and they moved with eerie precision. There were no wings, no engines, just a smooth, black surface that seemed to absorb light. And they weren't just hovering. They were positioning themselves in a formation that felt deliberate, like predators circling their prey. The world panicked. Governments scrambled jets, fired missiles, and activated satellites, but every strike failed. The alien ships absorbed or deflected everything. In some places, whole cities lost power. Communications went down. Panic spread faster than fire. People ran into the streets, staring up at the sky in horror. No one had a plan. Humanity, for all its technology and intelligence, seemed helpless. Elias rubbed his temples. He had been called in by the United Nations Emergency Task Force because of a strange anomaly he noticed in the alien movements. Most people saw only a fleet that was too advanced to fight, but Elias saw a pattern. The aliens moved in ways that suggested calculation, almost like they were testing humanity, probing for weakness. Something about it didn't feel right. Humans were unpredictable, irrational, emotional, and maybe, just maybe, that could be an advantage. He opened a terminal and began analyzing satellite feeds. His fingers flew over the keyboard as he traced the paths of the alien ships. There it was, a subtle rhythm in their formation, a tiny gap that appeared and disappeared, like a heartbeat. No one else had noticed it. The military was too busy panicking, too rigid in their thinking. But Elias knew this could be the key. Outside, the wind had picked up. The city was tense, almost waiting. A low hum filled the air, deep and vibrating, as though the alien ships were communicating in a language humans could not hear. Then, without warning, a beam of light shot down from one of the ships, vaporizing a car in an instant. People screamed. Panic turned into chaos. Soldiers tried to shoot at the ship, but their bullets bounced off like they didn't even exist. The aliens weren't just strong, they were untouchable. Elias leaned back in his chair, sweat dripping down his forehead. This was worse than anything he had ever imagined. And yet, for the first time, he felt a strange excitement. Most humans would have crumbled under this pressure, but his mind worked differently. The pattern in the alien movement wasn't just a coincidence. It was a mistake, a flaw that no one else could see. He had to act fast. He grabbed a piece of paper and started sketching the alien formations, marking the small gaps, the tiny inconsistencies in their pattern. His eyes widened as he realized something astonishing. The aliens were methodical, but they could not predict human creativity. Their technology was perfect for responding to logic, but not to unpredictability. A human mind, thinking outside every rule, could slip past their defenses. The door to his lab burst open, and a young technician ran in, panting. "Dr. Mercer, the military, they want a report. They're losing contact with the command centers. They want a plan." Elias shook his head, his mind racing. A plan. Conventional plans were useless. Missiles, fighter jets, lasers, none of it worked. They needed something completely different. Something that no alien could anticipate. "Listen," Elias said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "I think I've found a way. Not with weapons, not with brute force, but with the mind. If we can exploit their pattern, if we can think like they can't, we might just have a chance." The technician stared at him, disbelief written all over her face. A human mind? Alone? Against all of them? Elias didn't answer immediately. He looked back at the screen, at the black ships hovering like giants above a tiny, trembling world. The gap in their formation called to him. It was small, almost invisible. But it was real. And if he was right, it was the key to survival. He took a deep breath and whispered to himself, almost as if saying it out loud could make it real. One mind, one human mind can change everything. Outside, the hum grew louder. The sun disappeared behind the black silhouettes. The world held its breath. And somewhere in that darkness, Elias Mercer began to plan the impossible. The world was in chaos. Across every continent, people ran from cities, abandoned homes, and shouted in fear. Governments scrambled their armies, but their weapons were useless. Fighter jets flew straight into alien shields, and missiles evaporated before they could even reach the massive black ships hovering in the sky. Humanity's strongest defenses were failing, and panic spread faster than wildfire. Dr. Elias Mercer watched it all from his lab, heart pounding, fingers still hovering over his keyboard. He was no soldier. He had never led a battle or fired a weapon in his life. But in that moment, he realized something the generals did not. They were fighting the wrong way. Brute force could not defeat the aliens. The ships were far too advanced, and every human attack only seemed to confirm their invincibility. Elias turned to the large screen in front of him, analyzing the alien formation again. The rhythm, the slight pauses, the patterns, it was all still there. No one else could see it, but to Elias, it was clear. The aliens were precise, but precision was predictable. And predictability was something humans could exploit. He pulled up the satellite feeds from around the globe and started mapping every movement. As he did, he noticed a strange signal, a faint, pulsing energy coming from the largest ship. It wasn't directed at anything in particular. It was like a heartbeat. His mind raced. Could it be a communication signal? Or a control system? If he could understand it, maybe he could manipulate it. Meanwhile, the military held a council in New York. Generals argued over strategies, but every idea seemed small against the threat above. "We must focus all power on their weak points," one said. "Target the engines," another shouted. Elias watched from a distance, shaking his head. Engines, shields, weapons. They were thinking too narrowly. The weakness was not in their machines. It was in their logic. He grabbed a small drone from his lab, one used for research, and attached a receiver to it. The plan was risky: fly it close enough to the alien ship to capture its signal patterns. No one knew if it would survive. Elias' assistant, a young engineer named Mara, looked at him with wide eyes. "Are you sure this will work?" she asked. Elias smiled faintly. "I don't know if it will work. But if we don't try, humanity doesn't stand a chance." The drone lifted into the air, dodging collapsing buildings and frantic crowds. Elias watched the data stream in, numbers and patterns flashing across his screen. Slowly, a picture emerged. The aliens' movements were linked to their signals. Change the signal, and you could disrupt the formation. A single human mind, thinking creatively, could make the impossible happen. Outside, the alien ships began to adjust their positions. People screamed as massive shadows passed over cities. And then, something strange happened. One small ship, far from the others, hesitated. It twitched unnaturally, as if confused. Elias leaned forward, heart racing. This was the first sign that the aliens were not invincible. Mara gasped. "You did this." Elias shook his head. "Not yet. But we can." Word of his discovery reached a small team of soldiers. They were skeptical, but desperation had stripped away pride. The generals reluctantly allowed Elias to explain his plan. "We are not attacking with weapons," he told them. "We are attacking with thought. With unpredictability. With the human mind. If we can manipulate their signal, even slightly, it will create chaos in their formation. And chaos is our weapon." The soldiers exchanged uncertain looks. "You mean, you want to trick them?" one asked. Elias nodded. "Exactly. But it must be perfect. One wrong move, and they will destroy everything." Time passed. Every second felt like an hour as Elias worked. He adjusted codes, tweaked frequencies, and tried combinations that no human had ever imagined. The drone returned, battered but alive, with data that was almost impossible to understand. And yet, in that chaos, a plan began to form, a plan that no military mind could have created, because it relied on intuition, imagination, and unpredictability, human traits the aliens could not predict. That night, as the black ships hovered silently, people around the world watched the sky, fearing the end. But in his lab, Elias smiled faintly. For the first time, hope glimmered. Humanity had no weapons that could punch through alien shields. But they had something the aliens could never understand: creativity. Somewhere, high above, the alien commanders adjusted their positions, unaware that their predictable logic had just become their greatest weakness. And on Earth, one human mind prepared to make the impossible happen. The first move in a game humanity had no right to win was about to be played. The sky over Earth was still dark with the alien Armada, but something had changed. For the first time, humanity had a plan. Strange, risky, and impossible, but a plan nonetheless. Dr. Elias Mercer stared at the screens in his lab, watching the pulsing patterns of the alien ships. The numbers were complex, almost like a language he had never seen, but slowly, he began to understand them. Each ship emitted signals, tiny pulses that coordinated their movements. Change the signal even slightly, and the ship would hesitate, twitch, or adjust incorrectly. Elias had never hacked a network like this before. This was not a computer program made by humans. It was alien, beyond Earth's technology. But he had one advantage they didn't: unpredictability. Humans did not follow strict logic. A human mind could think in ways no alien system could anticipate. He placed his hands on the keyboard and began sending signals. Just tiny ones at first, nudges that should have been impossible to notice. And then it happened. A small alien drone, hovering above the city, hesitated. Its smooth black surface rippled, like water disturbed by a pebble. Then, without warning, it turned slightly, firing at another ship. The aliens were fighting themselves. Mara, his assistant, leaned over his shoulder, eyes wide. "You did that." Elias shook his head, barely smiling. "We did. One drone. Just one. But it proves it's possible." Across the globe, soldiers noticed strange movements in the alien formations. Ships that had seemed perfect and invincible now hesitated, twitched, and sometimes collided. Confusion spread through the Armada, but no one on Earth understood why. All except Elias. "Each drone has a signal," he whispered to Mara. "We can control the smaller ones first. If we manipulate enough of them, the big ships will struggle to coordinate. It's chaos. And chaos is human territory." He worked tirelessly, feeding patterns, testing frequencies, and adjusting the tiny nudges. Hours passed, though it felt like days. Then the first victory came. A squadron of alien drones began firing at each other instead of at the city below. Explosions rocked the air, sparks falling from their shields. People on the streets looked up in disbelief. The impossible was happening. Elias knew this was only the beginning. The alien fleet was vast, and one drone did not change the war. But it was proof that the aliens were not flawless. And that gave humans something they had not felt in a long time: hope. The military began to take notice. Generals who had dismissed Elias now watched closely as reports of alien confusion rolled in. Still, they were cautious. They could not understand what was happening. They had never seen a human manipulate alien technology with thought alone. Elias leaned back, eyes scanning the screens. Each twitch of a drone, each minor collision, told him that his understanding was growing. He could see the rules the aliens were following, the logic they could not escape. And he realized something crucial. They could anticipate humans who followed logic, but they could not anticipate creativity. They could calculate everything, but not imagination. Mara pointed at a cluster of drones, trembling slightly. Look at them, they're fighting each other. Elias nodded. Yes. And if we continue, we can escalate. If we force enough confusion, we might even reach the main ships. But one mistake, and everything fails. The tension in the lab was unbearable. Outside, the hum of the alien ships filled the air. Cities were dark, people hid, waiting for destruction. And above them all, Elias worked, weaving a web of manipulation through signals and frequencies, testing the limits of human ingenuity. Suddenly, the screens flickered. A large alien ship paused, rippling with signals unlike any others. Elias' eyes widened. It was responding to the chaos, trying to adapt, but adaptation took time. And time was what humans could use. He turned to Mara, voice low but urgent. We've made them hesitate. That's all we need. One human mind can start a chain reaction. If we keep pushing, their entire formation could collapse. But we have to be smart. They will notice if we push too hard. Mara swallowed nervously. And if they notice? Elias' eyes did not leave the screens. Then we die. But if they don't, we might just have a chance to save humanity. Outside, the world seemed frozen. People watched in terror, unaware that a single mind was already turning the tide. And high above, the alien Armada, once perfect and unstoppable, began to twitch, hesitate, and falter. One human mind had planted the first seed of chaos, and the battle for Earth had truly begun. The alien Armada was no longer perfect. For the first time in history, humanity saw a flicker of hope. Small drones were misfiring, colliding, and spinning out of formation. Entire sections of the alien fleet hesitated, unsure of how to respond. And at the center of it all, in his quiet lab filled with humming machines and flickering screens, Dr. Elias Mercer worked tirelessly, weaving a plan that no one else could imagine. He had discovered a truth the aliens could not understand. Their logic was flawless, but it was limited. They could calculate thousands of possibilities, but they could not calculate creativity, irrationality, or imagination. Humans were unpredictable. That unpredictability was their greatest weapon, and Elias intended to use it. Outside, the world still trembled. Cities were dark, emergency sirens wailed, and soldiers fought to maintain some semblance of order. But the alien ships above, once cold and perfect, now twitched and paused. Confusion spread through their ranks, and even the largest vessels, the ones humans had assumed were untouchable, struggled to adjust. Elias watched the patterns carefully. If we force them to overreact, he said to Mara, their own technology will work against them. Mara looked at him, eyes wide. We're tricking them, aren't we? He nodded. Yes. One human mind can't destroy all of them at once. But one human mind can make them destroy themselves. 4 hours, they manipulated signals, nudging one group of drones slightly off course, causing minor collisions, then amplifying the effects across the fleet. Soldiers in the sky reported strange phenomena, alien ships firing at empty space, shifting formations that made no sense, and communications between ships breaking down. Everywhere Elias touched, chaos grew. The first human strikes were tiny. A small group of drones collided in midair above Tokyo. In New York, a large alien vessel misfired its energy beam, missing the city by mere meters. Across Europe, alien ships hovered awkwardly, unsure where to go next. Humanity's weapons had done nothing, but human thinking had begun to turn the tide. Yet Elias knew this was only the start. The aliens would adapt if he pushed too far too fast. He needed a bigger plan, a way to escalate the chaos without alerting the main Armada. That meant exploiting one thing the aliens could never predict: emotion. He remembered studies on human fear, courage, and stubbornness. Humans did not always act logically. Sometimes, they fought even when they had no hope. Sometimes, they risked everything on a single chance. If he could translate that unpredictability into signals, into moves the aliens couldn't calculate, he could turn the entire fleet into a weapon against itself. "Listen," he told Mara, voice low. "We're about to go beyond small skirmishes. The next step will make them doubt everything they know. And when they doubt, even the largest ship can falter." The world held its breath. From the streets to the rooftops, from the forests to the deserts, people stared upward, unaware that the human mind above them was bending alien logic. And then it began. A cluster of drones suddenly shifted out of formation, spinning into one another. A small explosion rocked the nearest alien ship. Another misfired, firing a beam into empty space. And the largest vessels, the ones that had seemed untouchable, paused, blinking as if they had encountered something beyond their comprehension. Mara gasped. "It's working. They're confused." Elias did not smile. This was only the first stage. The aliens' largest vessels would adapt if left unchecked. He needed to create a chain reaction, a human-scale domino effect that would ripple through the entire Armada. It would take timing, intuition, and perfect unpredictability. Outside, humans began to notice. Soldiers reported strange patterns, and civilians whispered rumors of miracle escapes. No one knew the cause. They only felt the shift. For the first time, the invincible alien armada was not invincible. Elias leaned forward, eyes glued to the screens. He could see the pattern forming. A pattern only a human mind could predict, only a human mind could manipulate. For the first time, he allowed himself a thought he had not dared before. Maybe, just maybe, humanity could win. And above them all, the alien armada paused, unsure, hesitant, confused. One human mind had started a ripple that could grow into a wave capable of toppling the impossible. The first human victory had not come from weapons. It had come from thought, imagination, and courage. And that was just the beginning. The human victories had been small, almost invisible to the world at large, but they mattered. Aliens had begun to hesitate, to misfire, and even their largest ships wavered in formation. But Elias knew that small victories alone could not save the planet. To win, humans had to take a greater risk, a mission so dangerous that most would call it impossible. The United Nations had formed a special strike team to work with Elias. Soldiers, engineers, and a few brave pilots were selected to carry out the plan. They would approach the alien armada using the confusion Elias had created, planting devices that could amplify the chaos within the ships. One misstep, and they would be obliterated instantly. Elias briefed the team, pointing at the screens. "We are not attacking with weapons. We are attacking with strategy, with timing, and with courage. If we succeed, we force the aliens to destroy themselves. But this mission will be dangerous. Some of you may not return." There was silence in the room. Fear was written on every face, but also determination. Soldiers nodded, engineers adjusted equipment, and pilots checked their crafts. Humanity had nothing to lose but everything to gain. The mission began at dawn. Small craft carrying the strike team darted through the skies, using the alien confusion as cover. The armada was larger than anyone could imagine, but the drones and ships that had started misfiring gave the humans tiny gaps to exploit. Elias monitored everything from his lab. Every twitch, every misfire, every hesitation was relayed back to him. He adjusted the signals remotely, nudging drones to block enemy fire or to open small pathways for the human pilots. It was a dance of precision and unpredictability, a human mind against a fleet of machines. Suddenly, disaster struck. One of the lead ships was hit by an alien beam, exploding in a brilliant fireball. Mara shouted, panic in her voice, "They're adapting faster than we thought." Elias' fingers flew over the keyboard. "Hold steady. The chaos is spreading. Focus on the pattern." Another pilot radioed, voice trembling. "We've lost 2 people already. The rest of us are barely holding formation." But even as the first casualties fell, the team pressed forward. One pilot, a young woman named Lila, veered into the path of the alien drones to buy time for the others. Her craft was ripped apart, flames trailing across the sky, but her sacrifice allowed the remaining team members to reach the inner perimeter of the alien fleet. Elias' heart ached as he watched the data feed. He had expected danger, but the human cost was real. And yet, he also understood that this was the essence of what made humans different. They risked everything for survival, for each other, and for hope. The aliens, no matter how advanced, could never predict this. In the chaos, another human betrayed the mission. A technician, frightened by the destruction, tried to hijack the control system for personal gain. Elias noticed immediately, redirecting signals to block the sabotage. The alien armada, already confused, now faced a human element no one had anticipated: courage, sacrifice, and unpredictability. With precise timing, Elias guided the strike team to deploy the chaos amplifiers. Drones misfired, shields flickered, and alien communication systems began to fail. The larger ships struggled to maintain formation, twisting in confusion. Every explosion, every misfire, was proof that one human mind could influence the fate of millions. As the mission concluded, the surviving team returned to base, battered but alive. They had lost comrades, some to heroism, some to panic, but they had accomplished the impossible. The alien armada was beginning to unravel from within. Elias exhaled, exhausted but focused. "This is only the start," he said to Mara. "We've forced them to doubt. We've shown them humans are unpredictable. The next step will bring them to the breaking point." Outside, cities still burned, and people still hid, unaware that the battle was turning. High above, alien ships twitched and faltered, struggling against a force they could not calculate. And on Earth, one human mind had proven that courage, creativity, and sacrifice could bend even the most perfect enemy. The Armada had begun to crumble. Not through weapons, not through brute force, but through the unstoppable, uncalculable strength of humanity itself. The alien Armada was faltering. For the first time, the massive black ships twitched, misfired, and collided, not because of human weapons, but because of human thought. Dr. Elias Mercer knew this was the moment. The chaos he had started with small drones, signals, and unpredictable tactics had spread. Now it was time for the final move. In his lab, Elias adjusted the last sequence of commands. Every signal, every pulse, every minor tweak had to be perfect. One mistake could mean annihilation for humanity. Outside, the world still feared the looming shadow of the Armada. Cities were dark, fires burned, and the sky pulsed with the hum of alien engines. But high above, the balance of power was shifting. Elias' team of pilots prepared for the final assault. Their crafts were fragile against the alien ships, but they were fast, unpredictable, and guided by the human mind that had already proven capable of bending the aliens' logic. Each pilot had memorized patterns, escape routes, and signal manipulations. Every move would rely on timing, improvisation, and courage. "Remember," Elias said, voice steady but urgent, "this is not about brute force. It's about chaos. One human mind can't destroy all of them, but all of us, thinking differently, can make them destroy themselves. Trust the unpredictability." The pilots nodded, engines roaring. They darted into the swarm of alien drones, tiny crafts weaving through the black giants. Elias manipulated signals remotely, nudging the aliens to hesitate at exactly the right moments. Drones misfired. Shields flickered. A large vessel spun slightly off course, sending a ripple through the Armada. Mara watched the screens, hands trembling. "It's working. They're losing control." Elias didn't relax. He knew the aliens would adapt if given time. He had to escalate the chaos. With a deep breath, he triggered the final sequence: human minds influencing alien minds, unpredictability amplified, drones miscommunicating, and massive ships miscalculating. Explosions erupted in the sky. Drones collided, massive beams fired into empty space, and the Armada's perfect formation broke. The once impenetrable fleet now struggled to respond. Each misstep fed the next. The humans were dancing on the edge of disaster, yet their improvisation and courage kept them alive. One of the largest alien ships, commanding a dozen smaller vessels, froze midair. Its signals conflicted. Drones fired at each other. Shields collapsed in places. And then, it happened. The vessel spun wildly, collided with another, and erupted in a massive fireball. The chain reaction spread. One by one, alien ships misfired, miscalculated, and destroyed each other. On Earth, people watched in stunned silence. They had expected annihilation, but the impossible was unfolding. Humanity had no superweapons, no alien technology, no magic, just mind, courage, and unpredictability. Elias leaned back, exhaustion and disbelief warring in his mind. He had guided the humans through the chaos, but the final victory came not from him alone. Every human mind, every brave pilot, every improvised decision had played a part. The alien armada, once perfect and unstoppable, was crumbling. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds for the first time in days. The sky, once darkened by fear, now glowed with streaks of orange and gold. Fires still burned, cities were damaged, but humanity had survived. The Armada was defeated, not by technology or weapons, but by the human mind itself. Elias exhaled, voice barely a whisper. We did it. Humanity. We actually did it. Mara put a hand on his shoulder, tears in her eyes. You, Elias. You showed them the power of one human mind. Elias shook his head. Not just mine. Every person who risked everything, every person who refused to give up, that's what defeated them. Humans are unpredictable. We can improvise. We can survive. And we can win, even against impossible odds. High above, the remnants of the alien fleet fled, broken and disoriented. Humanity had survived its greatest test. And for the first time in history, the world realized that the mind, courage, and creativity of one species could overcome the most powerful force the universe had ever sent. The battle was over, but the story of humanity's strength, its ingenuity, and its spirit was only beginning. The skies were clear for the first time in what felt like weeks. The alien armada, once an unstoppable force, had been shattered. Pieces of ships drifted in orbit or fell into the oceans and deserts of Earth, burning like falling stars. Humanity had survived, and the planet breathed again. Dr. Elias Mercer stood on a hill overlooking the city. Fires still burned in some areas, buildings were damaged, and the streets were filled with people emerging cautiously from hiding. But the feeling in the air was different now. Hope. Relief. Pride. Mara joined him, her face smeared with soot and exhaustion. They're gone. All of them. Elias shook his head slowly. Most of them. The rest, they've fled. They've never seen anything like humanity. They underestimated one species, and that cost them everything. They couldn't calculate us. They couldn't predict creativity, courage, and unpredictability. That's what defeated them. Around them, the world celebrated in cautious joy. Soldiers hugged civilians. Children stared in wonder at the sky, pointing at the trails of destroyed alien ships. Governments coordinated relief efforts, but no leader claimed victory. This was humanity's triumph, earned not with weapons, but with minds and courage. Elias thought about the pilots, the scientists, and the ordinary people who had risked everything. Their ingenuity and bravery had been unstoppable. One human mind could start the ripple, but it had taken countless human minds working together to topple the alien fleet. The lesson was clear: humanity was not the weakest species in the galaxy. Yet, as Elias watched the horizon, a small unease settled in his chest. The aliens were gone for now, but the universe was vast. Somewhere out there, other forces were watching. Forces even more advanced, maybe more cunning. The signal disruptions, the chaos they had caused, those would not go unnoticed. He turned to Mara. We've won this battle, but the war may only be beginning. Humanity has a choice now. We adapt, we grow stronger, or we wait for the next threat. And when it comes, we'll be ready. Mara nodded. We learned something important, didn't we? Elias smiled faintly. Yes. One human mind is powerful, but all of humanity. Together? We are unstoppable. As the sun rose fully, warming the battered cities and the land that had been scorched, people began to rebuild. Humanity had survived its greatest test, not through strength, but through courage, creativity, and unity. The human spirit, unpredictable and defiant, had crushed a force that had seemed invincible. And high above, among the stars, distant eyes might be watching. They would remember Earth, a planet where a single species had proven that intellect, heart, and courage could overcome any enemy. Elias Mercer looked to the sky, feeling the weight of everything they had endured. Humanity had triumphed, but the universe still held mysteries and dangers beyond imagining. One thing was certain: humans would face them as they always had, with creativity, bravery, and the unstoppable force of the human mind. For now, Earth was safe. But the story of humanity's resilience was only beginning.